the theology of God's people. Welcome to Bible on the Go with Dr. Dan. And now it's time for another one of our Bible overviews, and this time we're doing the 13th book in the Bible, 1st Chronicles. Now, the title of this book is somewhat misleading, but if you think about it, it's an appropriate title. It sounds like it's a simple just history of Israel, because how we use the word Chronicles in our English language. But when you look at the 1 and 2 books in the Old Testament, in the middle of the historical books, you notice something, and that's what we're going to talk about. You see, 1st and 2nd Samuel gave us a history of the United Monarchy. 1st and 2nd Kings gives us the history of the monarchies, all the monarchies, including the 2 divided kingdoms, all the way up to the exile, ready for a return after 70 years. And 1st Chronicles is starting to tell the story, God's story with his people, a theological chronology. Because the point of 1st Chronicles, and subsequently what we'll discover with 2nd Chronicles, is that God knew what he was doing with his people, and these books are dedicated to describing that mission. One interesting thing is, in 1st Chronicles, you will see the word Israel in just 1st Chronicles a whopping 91 times. There's an emphasis on the nation of Israel, on the people of Israel, on the God of Israel, right? And so it shows up literally a boatload of times because it's 91 times. And then when you and I learned this from my historical books textbook from the class that I'm teaching, where it said that when you look at all Israel, the phrase all Israel, it's in there 19 times. And it's what the writer is referring to under the inspiration of the Spirit is everybody, right? That was a part of God's people, followed after David or whatever the context was, but all Israel, that notion is that God was doing something with his nation. It's really fascinating and it's really interesting because it's reflecting on God's promises to Israel in its long history, even though it is loaded with mistakes and dysfunction. You see, the first part of 1st Chronicles, from chapters 1 to 9, is a genealogical prologue. Now, that might sound boring, but when you think about genealogies, it's shouting to you that what's being described actually happened. God actually intervened with people on earth, right? So first there's a genealogy from Adam to Jacob in chapter 1 to chapter 2. The sons of Jacob are the sons of Israel until chapter 8, verse 40. And those who returned from exile, chapter 9, 1 through 34. So it's keeping track of what God was doing, even through the darkest days of Israel's history. And then you get to 1st Chronicles chapter 9, all the way actually to 2nd Chronicles 9:31, which is like, we'll get to that, right, is all about the United Monarchy, right? The reign of Saul from chapters 9 and 10, and then, the reign of David, right? David anointed king, chapter 11. David's mighty men, chapter 11. The ark brought to Jerusalem, chapter 13. The Lord makes a covenant with David, chapter 17. David's military victories, chapter 18. And preparations for the temple from chapters 21 to 29. Oh my goodness. Things like in that section, just the arrangement of the priests, the arrangement of the gatekeepers, and the arrangement of the musicians. I mean, it's loaded with stuff. And then all the way to the end of 1st Chronicles, we get to Solomon's succession and the death of David. So 1st Chronicles really accomplishing a lot and doing a lot, conveying God's great and grand promises for his people. And I do have a favorite couple of verses, and I want to share them with you. They're in 1 Chronicles 14 through 16, and it really gives the flavor of what the chronicler is trying to help us understand how much God was with his people. And I'm going to read it to you from the NIV, starting in verse 13 of chapter 14. Once more, the Philistines raided the valley. So David inquired of the Lord again, and God answered him, do not go directly after them, but circle around them and attack them in front of the poplar trees. So specific. And this is the part I love in verse 15, when it says, as soon as you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the poplar trees, move out to battle, because that will mean God has gone out in front of you to strike down the Philistines. Oh my goodness, right? When you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the poplar trees. Good God, that's fantastic. And then, so of course, here we go. David's doing what he's told to. So David did as God commanded him, and they struck down the Philistine army all the way from Gibeon to Gezer. Wow, just a powerful picture of how God was with his people, which is the point of 1 Chronicles. Thanks for watching Bible on the Go with Dr. Dan. If you like these videos, the best thing you can do is hit that button called subscribe. You only have to do it once, and it doesn't cost a single thing. Praise God!